Hey reader, this is Centaur here, and today we are doing something that I don't generally do on the channel and I don't intend to do very often. But we're going to answer a critical question on the day that this drops. Pre-order is going to begin in a couple of hours, and so we're very excited. This is going to be a very exciting time. But there was a question that came up in the AMA, several comments that were made during the AMA when they were going over pre-order details and discussing prices for everything and what things were going to look like and the bundles that you could get. And one of the kind of recurring sets of things was a specific group of users who were saying, man, this looks so expensive. Man, this is more expensive than GW. It's more expensive than 40k. And in the moment, I didn't say anything. I didn't really reply because it's been 10 years since I bought 40k models, ever since I jumped out of the game. And so I didn't want to really comment on it because I hadn't done the research. I hadn't looked around at things and I didn't have a strong semblance of it. But then, just giving it a little bit of time since that time, I went ahead and I did some research. And so today we're going to be setting out to answer the question pretty timely as we get ready to release for pre-orders. Is this actually an expensive war game? And is it more expensive than a similar-ish sort of game like 40k? And so to start off with, we're here in the army builder side of things behind this Starcraft beta. But just to give you an idea of kind of the baseline of what we're going to be working with, there was an email that was sent out officially by Archon Studios. It's called Pre-Orders Open in 4 days. If you got this email, there you go. If you don't remember seeing it, but you have been signed up for the newsletter, go ahead and take a look at it because it's there and it's really good. And what it does is, and the reason why we're using this is that this is what I'm going to consider the official prices for the purpose of this video. Okay, when we're looking at pre-order, the core starter set, which features Terran and Zerg, is going to be 199 USD. You also see everything listed in British pounds, euros, and Polish zloty. Okay, so you'll find them all there. We get a breakdown of exact numbers of models. We have a battle mat, which we've had confirmed is the full size, so it'd be 36 by 54. As their playing size. You've got 20 dice. We've got rules references. So, ability to be able to reference the rules, the assembly manual for all the miniatures, 15 actual real terrain pieces. And for those who are looking at the tokens, by the way, tokens are basically only activation markers, turn markers, and objective markers, and things like that. So no need to worry. This is not like Star Wars Legion where there's like tokens all over the place all the time. Okay, they're doing a lot less of that. There's rulers, very useful for going out to the various ranges. And then we know that the Protoss starter set is going to cost $109. We know how many models are coming in it. We know the number of tokens. Again, all the same sort of stuff that you'll get there. And then we also have prices for additional sets. All you need to know is they're typically $35, $39, or $49. Okay, 35 in the case of the Queen, I imagine, because there's just less sprue in here. 39 for the ones that have a relatively small number of models. So, 3 to 4 Protoss models. And then similarly, when you have like 3 medics and like a single hero who doesn't have as much plastic in there as, say, Artanis with the pylon or Kerrigan with the Omega Worm. So the Raynor costs a little bit less than the others do. But yeah, this kind of gives you an idea of what the prices are, and we're going to be working with these throughout our discussion to figure out how much does it actually cost to get started in StarCraft. Thankfully, over time, we also had pictures. So here's the picture of what comes in the Protoss set. So while it says 15 models, we know exactly what those models are. We know we're working with 2 squads of 3-man Zealot units, 1 squad of 4-man Adept units, 4-woman Adept units, whatever we want to say. Artanis with his pylon, and then 2 sentry models. Okay, and then similarly, we know what comes in here. We have 2 Marauders, so a small Marauder unit, 2 6-man Marine units, a small 3-man Medic unit, and Jim Raynor with the point defense drone. And then for the Zerg, we have 12 Zerglings plus an extra 6, so 18 normally Zerglings. There's another 6 Zerglings, but also they come with 1 sprue kit for upgrading 6 of them to Raptors, in case you want to do a Kerrigan Raptor Zergling swarm. So 24 total Zerglings plus a few upgrade kits. We have 3 Roaches, a Queen, and of course the Omega Worm that comes with Kerrigan. And so with the knowledge that that's what we're working with, we're going to jump into open beta and we're just going to build. And we're going to see what can you actually take with this. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. We're going to take Raynor's Raiders as our thing. It doesn't really matter between the 2. I'm just going to do this because it means you get the hero thing. The only other way to get a hero slot is to take the supply depot, which is an excellent upgrade. So you should probably consider taking it anyway. Today, we're not actually building this out for how to build an army. We'll do that in a future video. We're just going to build so we have enough slots up here to include everything. And the nice thing about it is we actually already have that because we're going to have 1 small unit of Marauders, which is 1 supply, 2 6-man units of Marines, which is 1 supply each, and those will be our core. We have 1 supply worth of medics, and then we have Raynor, and that's going to be it. So we're not actually going to include any of the other cards here. And we're just going to throw in what we currently have. Okay, we've got Jim. He comes with the point defense drone. We've got a small unit of Marauders, 2 small units of Marines, and a small unit of Medics. Okay, we'll talk about the Rainer's Raider Marine unit a little bit later because it isn't necessary to prove this point. But when we look through here, we're already starting at 810, which is not quite the skirmish level of 1,000 that we have for smaller level games. It'll be somewhere 1,000 points or lower for smaller level games over in StarCraft. But that also means we don't have any upgrades. Once we start purchasing upgrades, we'll just purchase all of them. They aren't strictly necessary, but let's just say that we're going to purchase every single upgrade. You'll notice we haven't even made it all the way through the Marines yet, and we're at almost 1,000. In fact, if I just buy a couple more upgrades, we haven't even touched the medic. We have gone very light on our second unit of Marines. I don't think they actually have a second sprue for combat shields, so I think you can only put shields on one of the 2 squads, so I wouldn't take that one anyway. But even if we were to do this and grab all of the upgrades, you're now looking at an army that's almost 1,200 points. And if we were to split up the combat shields between the 2 and tell our buddies, hey, they all have combat shields, ones that don't have combat shields will be my first casualties, right? To keep it simple, you are at basically almost 1,200 points. And if you wanted to hit 1,200 points, we could take 2 units of Rainer's Raiders instead. Oh, and actually we'll cut that part because it looks like, oh yeah, right, because they can't take some of the other stuff. So that's fine. So suffice it to say, 1,200 points. That's more than a small level game, okay? And if you want to know, by the way, what it would look like to upgrade to 2,000 points, I'll save you guys some time. We'll go ahead and we'll just jump into here. And so that's up to 1,200 points, which is a small level game. But if you wanted to go up to the full 2,000 points, kind of the largest level they recommend playing at, anything beyond that, it's grand epic scale, and it's going to be a lot longer, and it's going to involve a lot more models, that sort of thing. Here's how much it would actually take for you to do that, right? So here we've got Jim, we've got our single unit of Marauders, the small unit of Marauders, we've got our medic, point defense drone that comes with Jim, we've got 2 units of Rainer's Raiders. You can take these more expensive. This is actually a cheaper one because these ones don't have rocket launchers on them. So they were actually slightly cheaper than if you were to buy them as the normal Marine squad, but they get an extra special rule, which I think is interesting. It also helps to show you that there are different ways to run Marines, which is great. You could buy 1 unit of Goliaths, 1 unit of Marauders, and 1 unit of Marines, which is $49 each. And you would be at 2,000 with room to spare. Because again, this is a cheaper way to run the 2 Marine squads we already had before. And if that's the case, what that tells me, because they don't have the shields and they don't have the rocket launchers for the Rainer's Raiders Marines, that means that for $99.50 plus just shy of $150, so just under $250, you could buy everything you ever need for all of your Terran needs for the rest of time and never spend any more money on it, okay, for the rest of your life, which is really not that bad. But keep in mind the number currently to beat when we jump over to the GW side is going to be $250, okay? When looking at the Zerg, it gets really interesting because here, we'll start with Kerrigan Swarm once again. We are going to have to buy a couple of upgrade cards just because we aren't going to have enough core slots in order to get us where we need to go, but we don't need too many. So I'm just going to buy, we need at least a hatchery because we need a support slot for the Queen. And we're just going to buy Roach Warren and maybe a couple spawning pools just in case. And then what's going to happen is we're going to start buying our units. So we'll have Kerrigan, and she'll have the Omega Worm, which doesn't change anything. And then we'll buy the Raptor Swarm, the specific to Kerrigan Swarm, because that's kind of fun. And then allow us to take the other 18 Zerglings as a larger squad, which is kind of nice. We'll have those for controlling objectives. And then we still have the Roach. Now you're already looking at almost 900 points, whereas starting without upgrades, Rainer's Raiders, we're looking at 810. So we're actually a little bit higher than that. The first ones don't have any upgrades because they're special units. And so we're going to go ahead. We're just going to go ahead and start buying some upgrades. And you'll notice, once again, we are at more than 1,000 points. Now, there are more points efficient ways to do this. Hold on. We don't even have the Queen in here. We're doing even better than that. Look at that. Here's our Queen. We are looking at a solid 1,200 points for the Zerg. Okay, so once again, clearly able to play smaller level games and more than halfway there to playing the larger games. And to give you an idea of what that would look like at a larger points level, we'll still take Kerrigan, the Omega Swarm. We'll still take that small little Raptor Swarm Zergling Swarm because it's kind of fun. We'll take the Queen. We aren't even going to fully upgrade her because we need the points elsewhere. We'll take that larger Zergling set, and then you could just buy 1 box of Hydralisks and 1 box of Roaches, because this is actually just the Roacher set that comes with the rest of the kit. We haven't purchased the Roaches yet. So you buy literally 2 kits. You spend an extra $100. You're at under $200, and you have 2,000 points worth of Zerg, which is really not bad at all, okay? Really, really good. And then when we start looking at Protoss, no hints, and I will get to it. Sure enough, surprise, surprise, you can get to 2,000 points worth of Protoss. But with Protoss, we're going to go with, we'll go with the Kalai version. It means we have to take Power Field, because otherwise we can't. Oh, never mind. This one already gives us a hero slot, which is great. That's the thing I was worried about, was not getting a hero slot. We do need to take one now that gives us a support slot. So here we'll just take an observer. That way we can run it. I need to take some stuff that gives me extra core so that we can run here. We'll just do like 2 gateways because it doesn't matter. So we can have enough core to run everything, and I think we're good. And so we're going to get access to Artanis. We get 1 unit of Adepts. We'll skip over the Praetor Guard because they're unique, and we'll just run the Zealots. As needed, we'll come back to that one. The Pylon that comes with Artanis, we'll grab 1 Sentry because we get 1 unit of Sentries, and 2 units of Zealots. Now, you'll notice we're already at almost 900 points. Haven't upgraded everybody, and we don't even have to go very far before we hit 1,000, as you'll notice once again. Pylon doesn't have any upgrades because it's just a building, okay? And when we start getting into the Zealots, I mean, we've already passed it, and we're still working on our 2 Zealot units, right? And so here we are, once again, almost 1,100, so it is less than the others have, but still not horrible, and over 1,000, right? You do have room and freedom to be able to choose, do I want Zealous Round? Am I ever going to use Zealous Round? Well, I can scrap those, and I don't need to worry about it, okay? But more than that, and this is the big thing, you'll notice that this is a unit that's 230 points. This Praetor Guard unit is 280 points, and if you're running the Kalai, led by them, there's really not a whole lot of reason not to take these guys because they get Titan Killers, which is really nice. It allows them when they're, fighting against something that's really big. Right now, that's basically like Goliaths and Queens and stuff like that. Their weapon damage is treated as 2 instead of 1, so they do more damage with every hit, which is really nice. They also get precognition, so they get to make an evade save when things are targeting them. I think they can only pop this on the close combat phase, but it does mean, hey, like you get a chance to keep them alive a little bit longer, which is always nice. But you'll notice here, again, not quite as high as the others, but pretty darn close. And when we end up switching over to the 2,000 points one, we have Artanis, our unit of Adepts, our Sentry, our double Zealots. All you have to buy is 2 units of Stalkers and another Zealot unit. That's, again, $110 plus just under $150 is just north of $200 and just south of $260 in order to start the game. Okay, so the number to beat is 260. Okay, that's the number that we're looking at. And when we look at Warhammer 40k, I'm going to look at Space Wolves because Space Wolves is the army I used to play, so I understand a little more of what they're like. I hope that they're more or less similar to when I played like 10 years ago. But in this case, the most cost-efficient way to get started is to buy the Combat Patrol. Okay, this is your box set. There is no other starter army or starter set that comes with this. And looking at it, Combat Patrol came out after I left the game, but this tells me this is like 1 unit of Grey Hunters, assuming they're still called Grey Hunters. And here's 1 unit of Terminators over here. This is a newer unit. I want to say they're called like the Wolfen or something like that. I feel like Frontline Gaming pushed me an email that talked about the release of these guys a while ago. Very, very long time ago, feels like. And so, kind of, again, a nice and very, very kind of flavorful way of doing, those fast infantry sort of things. And then down here, we've got our hero, right? Typically, these are unnamed. This is, just your general, unnamed sort of person, so you can build your own thing. And I believe Combat Patrol is supposed to be designed that way. And again, since Combat Patrol wasn't around when I was in the game, I consulted Gemini, and Gemini tells me that typically games are about 500-point games that come with pre-boxed army sets that are around 400 to 500 points per box. They're played on a 4x4 board. That'll come up a little bit later. But again, that's smaller than the standard 40k board of 4x6. So with that in mind, you're paying $170 for something that can let you play the small version of the game, which the small version of the game, you can play with StarCraft for under $199.50 and $109. Okay, so you're already running cheaper. And again, this is just to get your army. This does not include rules. This does not include your codex. This does not include dice. It doesn't include rulers. It doesn't include terrain. It doesn't include a board. It doesn't include tokens of any kind. It's just the models, right, in order to play your game. Now, if you wanted to get that sort of stuff. For the purpose of our assessment, we'll just assume you're going to use people's YouTube videos and a tabletop army builder so that you don't have to buy the codex. I would highly recommend in 40K that you do, because if somebody asks you questions about your rules, you don't want to say, well, some schmuck on YouTube told me that this is the case. Okay. As one of those schmucks on YouTube, buy your codex, okay, and use the rules. Have the rules on hand in case somebody asks you a question. That is technically an extra $35 for the purpose of our assessment. I'm going to spot that to you for free. I'm going to say a friend of yours is getting out of the hobby and they give you a codex that they're never going to use, or you find one for super cheap on eBay or something else like that. I don't know how you'd find a super cheap one on eBay, because cheap ones on eBay tend to be the ones from previous editions. But let's just say you get that for free. You don't have to use it somewhere. If you want to get 500 points, keep in mind, you are paying almost as much as the Zerg are paying to start their army for a quarter of the points, and well more than what they needed to play at small levels, right? If you want to get to even half of your points playing in this game, you can't even buy 2 of these combat patrol units, because you're probably not going to run 2 of this captain unit. You'd probably want a psyker or some other sort of magic, spellcaster sort of character. And those guys are going to cost you, an extra, 42. I think there is one that's under 40. Hopefully there's one still under 40. Yeah, there we go. Something like an Iron Priest or something like that. You have some sort of a support character that's there in the back. You're now over 200, which means you've now passed the Zerg. If you want literally more than, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4 units, 5th if you include your other character, if you want to have 6 or 7 units, you've already passed all the others, because you're looking at a minimum of something like a Blood Claws or a Grey Hunters for an extra $65, right? And that assumes you don't want fast units. That assumes that you don't want Venerable Dreadnoughts, where you're adding literally 1 model for an additional 65. To say that to play standard 40K is on par with cost or even less expensive than this, you have to be buying on eBay. You have to be buying on eBay. It's the only way to do it. If you're actually buying stuff from the store and guaranteeing that you get access to the models, and that they're actually the models in question that you wanted, and that they are of the same quality GW makes, and they're not somebody's, 3D print knockoff version, you have to pay a good bit more than this. You could easily be looking at $400 to $500 minimum, which is at least twice what this is. And if you're going up to 2,000 or even 3,000 points, because there are some events that run that high in 40K, in fact, quite a few that are going to run it at least 2,000 points, 3 times as much, 4 times as much. It can be quite expensive in order to do this, again, by comparison to what we have. And this assumes we aren't factoring in the cost of the rule book or the codex. We're just talking models, right? This assumes no terrain purchases, because of course they do sell terrain for 40K. This assumes no board, because again, this is just the models. It's more expensive. Okay, it is more expensive, just the sheer math of it, unless you're buying it from a third-party retailer, buying everything used. Okay, in which case, to be fair, you might also get it painted, which is not nothing. Okay, and fully assembled, because for some people that's a real problem. So why would people say it's more expensive? Because there were multiple people who were absolutely convinced this was more expensive. Here's my suspicion, giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not assuming that these guys or people who are coming in trying to make a stink and somebody else is asking me anything. I think that these guys were talking in good faith. And here's what I think it is. I think that they were on the Learn to Play site, or they purchased from the Learn to Play site, and they purchased this. This is a starter set. Okay? And what they mean by starter set, as you can see, is, what is that? 11 models, which is less than you get for the Terrans in the starter set, but is roughly, if this is Ultramarines, which it looks like it's the right color scheme for Ultramarines, that's about 500 points. That's like combat patrol size. Okay. In fact, I think that might even be the literal combat patrol for the Ultramarines. And then on the right-hand side, you have Tyranids. That's actually not the combat patrol for the Tyranids. Tyranids have an interesting makeup. It's actually only about 20 models. This one has a lot more, I think, because they wanted thematically for you to be able to see the horde, which honestly I think is really smart. And if I was doing combat patrol, again, I don't really play it, so maybe there'd be a busted reason for having it this way. I think it would be better to go the heavy theme and go this route. But again, this is actually it's the same number of models minus the Omega Worm as you get for the Zerg, because they get 24 Zerglings. You're getting 24 little Tyranid dudes. Or in fact, actually, no, you're only getting 10 Tyranid dudes, plus the 2 blobby things, which I feel like go with the big monster thing, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I have been out of 40K for a very long time. I never played Tyranids. One of my friends collected, and only Ren Carnifexes pretty much. So I don't know hardly anything about Tyranids, to be honest. And then, we've got a unit of elites there in the back, which is basically similar to the roaches. We've got our large one, which is basically probably the same amount of plastic, more or less, as a queen. So the result is it's less models because it's about similar to the Zerg minus the big Omega worm, which is the big worm in the room. It's less models than you get with the Marines because this is basically the same as like Jim Raynor plus one squad of Marines minus one of the things plus the 2 Marauders and the 3 medics. So you have a whole extra unit of Marines plus the extra man that isn't present in this little tactical squad. Like, I'm sorry. It is a lot less that you're getting out of this, which would be part of the reason why it costs less. There's no terrain, which is even more plastic, which is being thrown in there. This is a, papery sort of board that if we assume that this is not AI generated images, that this is real images, it looks to be 15 by 24, more or less, maybe 22. Because those look to be 12-inch rulers that are present there. So about half of a combat patrol board is kind of what it looks like, which kind of makes sense because then, if you buy one and your buddy buys one, you put them together and you have a combat patrol board, right? But again, this is half of a starter board. This is not actually enough to start playing the game, even at the lowest level of points, even if you have the points levels worth of stuff. It does not, again, include the rules. You have a handbook, which is the slim version of the rules that kind of teach you the basics of how phases work and stuff like that. You'd get profiles for the units that come in this, but it's not a full codex. So you still have to get the codex on top of that. Again, to be clear, yes, you're right. This is less expensive than the starter set. But this is also not you and your friends can play the game straight out of the box. This is you and your friends can play through a couple of introductory scenarios to learn how to play the game. And then you'll need to go about building your own boards and, setting out your own stuff and stuff like that, right? Like, this is a gateway. It is not actually access. That's an important thing I think to remember. And that makes sense because there's another one that is. Now, once again, this looks to be basically combat patrol, although you'll note that there is like an extra model here in the back. It looks like an extra character. And there's an extra unit of dudes up here on top of this building. Okay. This one is actually $20 more than the starter set, though it does come with the core rule book. So that explains part of the $108 increase in price. We have actual terrain, which is nice. We're getting, of course, a couple of extra models that we've already discussed. So, there is more coming here. I'm not saying this is a bad deal, but what I am saying is that if we're looking for an apples-to-apples comparison, this is the set that is the actual comparison. And once again, when you look at those 12-inch rulers, assuming, again, this is not an AI image, and this thing is real, it looks even more so to me like this is 12 by 24 in terms of the board size. This is not actually a full-size board. It's certainly not 4x6, right? This is not one that you would be able to play a full game of 40k at, right? Whereas the board that we get from Archon, you can easily fold it to be 36 by 36, which is what that smaller skirmish level points level should be. Or you can fully extend it and it becomes the full board for when you're playing up to 2,000 points. You have everything you need. Okay. Now we don't need to belabor a point again. I'm not here to say anything mean about anybody. I'm not trying to be unkind in how I approach this, but I do think it is fair to say that when you're looking at it from cost, just purely off of cost, $35 to $50 a set compared to $65 to $69 a set. Okay, which is what we're seeing from GW. Okay, which is a good 33% more. Okay, when you're looking at the amount you're getting in these starter sets, that you're looking at getting at in the bundles, you are able to start playing the game at the highest level of points for $200 to $260, which is you getting to about the halfway point, larger than Combat Patrol, but a good bit lower than some of your standard tournaments for 40k. If you're playing in the 40k style, right? For a good bit more, for the same amount of money, right? You're getting a good bit more points. You're able to play the game a lot faster. It is a lot far less of an initial investment. And everything beyond that you want to buy is just because you want to have options of things you want to switch things out for, right? Or maybe you and your friends really want to play a campaign where you guys are playing closer to like 3,000 points, right? Or something like that, just because you want that epic scale, you want to have fun. When siege tanks drop, you want to run more than one, right? You want to run them alongside Goliaths. You want to run them alongside, Banshees and stuff like that, as those are coming about, all of which we're expecting this year in 2026. It's going to be a very exciting year. But suffice it to say, as you're getting ready to make your pre-orders, obviously, one, be financially responsible. But two, keep in mind, you don't need to spend a lot of game to get started in this hobby. You can spend $260, just buy some Protoss stuff, and have an army that you could use for the rest of your life. And you can do it on a payment plan, right? They offer a payment plan as long as you're buying it through, I believe it's through GameFound. You can buy it that way. So there are options, there's availabilities. Don't break your bank, take care of yourself, make wise financial decisions, okay? But just suffice it to say, if you're asking the question, is this a very expensive game? The answer to that question is no. It's really not. And so my encouragement, support them today, buy some models, okay? Take advantage of the deals while they're here, because once they go to retailers, you're not going to be able to get the bundles at the reduced cost that you're able to get them for now, okay? Buy the stuff that you think you're going to like, that you're going to find is interesting, but do so in the knowledge that this is not going to be as expensive a hobby as other hobbies that you may have in the wargaming sphere, unless you want it to be. And so, if you have thoughts on this, or if there's any unit that you're specifically looking at buying, please let us know down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.